Does Bryan Mbeumo to Manchester United make sense? Today we're going to be answering that question with tactics, analysis, and of course statistics. If you are new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, but anyway, let's get this party started. The big question, does it make sense for Manchester United to sign the Brentford man? So United have got a bit of a problem with their squad. They are lacking players of quality that can fit the Ruben Amorim way. So one of the positions that Manchester United need to recruit for in the summer is this right wing position. What Ruben Amorim likes to do with his front three is have one player that operates as a bit of a second striker, a centre forward number 9 that likes to attack the channels and run in behind defences, and a right winger that likes to kind of pull wide and operate as a nominal winger of the team. And here's where Bryan Mbeumo fits in perfectly for Manchester United. United need a player of his ilk, and Mbeumo could exactly do that. But I think when we look at that right-hand side, Manchester United have got a great right wing back in Amad Diallo. That, for me, is his position going forward. The way that he can change the game, the way that he can press, the way that he can be aggressive on and off the ball is super important. But he needs a reliable partner. I think also for Manchester United, having more left-footed players in the team is something that they need. All of the best teams that have massively overperformed in the last 5 years in European football have a plethora of left-footed attackers and players within the team. Ruben Amorim's Sporting Lisbon was a prime example of that. So more left-footed players. So number one, that makes sense. But talking about the relationship on that right-hand side, the big thing, of course, with Bryan Mbeumo, he does like to pull wide. He does like to receive the ball in these wide areas before kind of dribbling either on the inside or going on the outside and then looking to get shots off or create for his teammates. And here's where I think it would quite work well with Amad. Amad's a player that's also comfortable at providing the width on the overlap. We saw that in a number of assists this season, you know, those kind of cutbacks into the penalty area for either the far side 10 or low balls across the face for the 9. It's an area where United need to improve. So number one, Amad and Mbeumo would work from that type of relationship. You know, a classic winger being overlapped by a wing back, but also in that central space. I do like the idea, obviously, the fluidity of Manchester United on this right wing. You know, Lenny Yoro, Amad, and Mbeumo is a super dangerous three-man unit on that side. And I think with Amad playing in those central areas, not only could we see those classic Ruben Amorim underlaps in behind the defence from that position, but also combination play on the inside. You know, let's say that ball's played into that central area from Mbeumo. Amad now being able to link and combine with the front three. Of course, Matheus Cunha will be a Manchester United player next season. The number 9 is a position that really needs to be sorted. The lap's going to Chelsea. Gyökeres looks like he doesn't want to move because of Champions League football, but there are still many options on the market, such as Jean-Philippe Mateta. Of course, with Mbeumo, in terms of player profile, he can also play in those central areas. Seen him for Brentford receive in these areas really well and directly kind of attack the opposition's backline. So I think that's another good thing. You know, when we're looking at players that Man United are signing this summer, does it make sense? I think the big thing United need is Premier League proven players, number one. Players coming into their peaks, number 2. But also players that can kind of carry offences. And that's what Bryan Mbeumo has done at Brentford. But I think when you look at Cunha and you look at Mbeumo, both 26 years old, so could work really well in that idea that you're building the right age demographic. Then the other thing with Bryan Mbeumo, when we're looking at the statistics, 55 of his 136 games in the Premier League have actually come of him playing as a centre forward in these kind of central areas. With the style of Brentford as well, they do like to push those wide forwards into the box when the ball is on the far side. So expect the likes of Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha to be in there. Man United with a proper front three. I've not said that for a few years. It's getting a bit stressful, guys, as you can imagine. But I also do think if Manchester United do want to play slightly different, you know, something that I do believe Ruben Amorim really needs to do is occasionally play 3-5-2 with 2 forwards, either in big games or at the end of games, or even in certain matches where the tactical lineup works. Yes, I do like the 3-4-3 system that he plays, or the 3-4-2-1, but I do think a 3-5-2 against certain teams works really well. We saw Atalanta do it really well in Serie A last season. So that would, let's say, B, Manchester United throwing, another midfielder in there, let's say Casemiro, anchoring the midfield, pushing Fernandes and the 6 a little bit higher, and these two players playing in the channels. This could work very well if, for example, Manchester United have dropped a little bit deeper and they're kind of defending the ball. Looking at those kind of quick breaks on the transition is an area that we've seen already. Matheus Cunha do that for Wolverhampton Wanderers, spinning in behind defences, but also Mbeumo. And I would actually say Mbeumo is one of the best in the Premier League at making moves off the ball. I love his intensity. He made more sprints last season than any other Premier League player, constantly available. So whether that works for this 3-5-2 structure that Ruben Amorim really needs to start putting into his tactical setup and ideas just to change the dynamic of certain games, but also when you think about other players, such as Joshua Zirkzee. Joshua Zirkzee, as we kind of know, is more of a false 9 type player. When we analyse Joshua Zirkzee before he left Bologna, left Serie A to join Manchester United, he's a player that loves coming off the line and linking. That worked maybe in Erik ten Hag's system, but for it to work in Ruben Amorim's system, you really need 2 forwards that are constantly going to provide threat in behind the defence. Once again, we've seen Matheus Cunha do that at Wolves, but we've also seen Bryan Mbeumo do it in the Premier League, having those runners to get behind the defence. Not only does he have the volume of sprints, but his speed is very good. 3rd in the Premier League last season. And what I like about it as well is United have got a lot of players that like to go towards the ball, and receive possession, get on the ball in those deep areas. The likes of Cunha does like to drop in. We mentioned previously, he loves to drop into this kind of position to get on the ball and switch the play. If you've not checked out our Cunha video, make sure you do that because that's a massive part of his game. But what Mbeumo will do is balance out the attack, similar to how Marcus Rashford would do with Anthony Martial, where you've got a guy that is going to constantly make those moves elsewhere when your 9 and maybe your other number 10 has dropped in. This is a reason why it really, really makes sense. The speed, the intensity, and also the tactical awareness of when to go. You don't play under Thomas Frank in the Premier League and be successful for a few years if you're not tactically switched on. And look, we've not built this channel on waffle, we've built it on pure examples. Here's a goal that can highlight that fact. So pick up the play with Brentford building out from the back. What I want you to notice is that Damsgaard, who's about to receive possession, is off the line, so is Johan Visser. Brentford built this season in a 4-2-2 structure with the 2 wingers holding the width high up the pitch. Something that Man United could do either with Cunha playing high, the left wing back playing high, but on the right side and Mbeumo being that high player. So as we kind of pull the play on, there's a little 1-2 in midfield. You draw in the full back in, you're playing through, you're getting yourself into a really good position. But just notice the position of Kevin Schade on the left wing and Bryan Mbeumo in that centre forward area moving off the right line. This is exactly what he could do with Joshua Zirkzee at Man United, or even Matheus Cunha playing as that number 9. The movement is very good, but I think the biggest thing here is the speed. He leaves the Brighton backline for dead. The ball is very good into his feet. He simply accelerates past Statman, who by no means is a slow player, and finishes really well with his right foot into the bottom corner. Again, something Man United could do, giving them another attacking element in the final third. So now let's talk about numbers. Do the numbers make sense for Mbeumo to join Manchester United? In fact, Bryan Mbeumo, 20 goals in the Premier League. Only the likes of Salah, Isak and Haaland scored more. 7 assists as well, 3 coming from corners. Again, something Man United need to improve on. But looking at the United squad, his goal involvements, 27, is more than the likes of Rasmus Højlund, Joshua Zirkzee, Alejandro Garnacho and Marcus Rashford managed for Man United combined. So yeah, there is some quality there. But if we dive a little bit deeper into his finishing, that's quite interesting. He overperformed his expected goals more than any other player in the league. In his last 2 seasons before this season, he was basically on average, just slightly underperforming when we're looking at the expected goals per 90 in terms of that shooting efficiency. And you can look at that in 2 ways. Yes, maybe he's had a random year. Maybe this is the year where it's all worked for him, it's all clicked, and that's why he's massively overperforming expected goals. But actually, I think when you look at players that are coming through, that are getting to the peak of their career, what hopefully we're seeing which is a good reason why Man United are getting him, and it would make sense, is that gradual improvement to a level of a player that's going to be improving his expected goals numbers year on year. But I think with the big thing with Mbeumo, he can score great goals, and we saw a few of them this season, starting with his strike against Spurs. Again, we mentioned previously when the ball is on the far side, on the left wing, Mbeumo attacks the penalty area. He becomes another striker. The ball in from Keenan Lewis-Potter is good, but the volley is absolutely brilliant from Bryan Mbeumo. Something that he could add to Manchester United quality in the penalty area. Moving forward to another goal that I really enjoyed. One of the big things we previously mentioned is that ability to run in behind defences, stretch the opponent. United just don't do that enough. It's frustrating. But we pick up the play with Brentford winning a second ball in the centre of the pitch. Norgard takes one touch, gets his head up and sees his teammate Mbeumo running in behind the defence. So key when you're facing good mid-blocks like Newcastle, is having someone that's going to run the other way. Something United just haven't had this season at all. But anyway, back to Mbeumo. First touch is very good. Obviously, he's going to come inside. You know, he's got a 1v1 with the defender. This is a tendency he has when he faces up fullbacks like this. What he wants to do is get shots away. Not only is it those kind of long-range curlers, but this one is brilliant. First up, facing the fullback, checking inside, driving into the middle. Again, 3 Newcastle players converging him. Still manages to get the shot high into the top right. What a finish that is. And I think those 2 goals, you're starting to see a player that's playing with massive confidence right now. That would humongously improve Man United's attack. That's been rubbish. So what's another thing that Manchester United struggle with? Simply put it, creativity. And that's another area that Bryan Mbeumo would come in and would help United. Another reason why it would make sense to bring the Brentford man to Old Trafford. The big thing with Mbeumo for Brentford, and it should be for Manchester United, is he is an outball. Whether that's him spinning in behind the defence or him receiving to feet, you know, taking a long ball down. He is an outlet. He's a player that can receive possession. In terms of statistics, in the 24-25 season, only Mohamed Salah had more progressive passes received and had more touches in the final third. But also, when looking at that creation, only Saka, Palmer and Salah created more big chances in the league than Bryan Mbeumo. Not only is he getting the ball in those areas that you want attackers to receive the ball in, he's also making things happen. Either that being, we mentioned previously, cutting back and hitting the back post, or alternatively, going on a little bit of a dribble back on that inside and finding one of his teammates on a reverse pass. That's something that he's done really well. And there's a little area that he likes to play passes to, just kind of around this zone. Seen him do it for Visser, but also for Damsgaard. And here's that pass against Bournemouth. Mbeumo receiving the ball wide right, again operating as this inverted winger, something that Amorim had at Sporting Club de Portugal in Trincão. But Mbeumo playing a pass inside, receiving the ball back, getting himself into a good little bit of an inside position. A little carry, but with his head up. I like how he spots the run. Damsgaard's movement off the ball is really, really good in this situation. And he finds him with a brilliant pass in behind the defence for Damsgaard to potentially cross the ball to one of his teammates, but he fires low and puts the ball in the back of the net. That awareness to create for his teammates, as well as being an outlet, is a big reason why it makes sense for Man United to buy the Brentford man. But when we talk about creativity, we've got to mention set pieces, an area where Man United have struggled over the years. Amad Diallo is a good left-footed choice. United now have got another right-footer in Matheus Cunha, but having another player there in Bryan Mbeumo that has quality in these situations is really important. If we take into consideration assists from set pieces, only Anthony Elanga in the Premier League managed more this season. So let's move on to the defensive side of the game. Does Bryan Mbeumo make sense to United based on what he does off the ball? Well, quite Thomas frankly, it absolutely does. Mbeumo is a player that presses with intensity, something that Man United have lacked in their forward line. It was so nice to watch a player when we were doing our analysis that works hard defensively, that orchestrates his teammates, that tells them when they're not pressing or not being aggressive enough. A player that not only presses, but drops back into defensive positions. God, it was refreshing. So let's take a look at one example of Mbeumo pressing high up the pitch. This came in the game against Newcastle. So the ball gets cleared from the Brentford box. In this situation, Mbeumo is in that nominal striking position. Got to cover the passes inside, and he's got to jump at the right time. So not only does he provide a little bit of pressure, he stops, frees himself up. This allows him to then act on the next moment. That, of course, is the ball getting played out to the Newcastle right fullback. The touch comes in. Damsgaard jumps, forcing the pass back, and now here's where you see the intelligence. Not only is the curvature of the run very, very good to block that ball back inside, but then he jumps further, presses Nick Pope, wins the tackle, and has an opportunity on goal that's really, really well defended. But that is just so refreshing to see. The right time to be intense, the right time to hold your position, then jump again, follow your pressure, win the ball back, you potentially score a goal. So number one, he can press, he can jump, and number two, of course, he's very good at getting back into a deep block, something that Manchester United's wingers have really struggled with over the years. I don't know whether it's a physical thing or whether it's just they can't be bothered. Either or. But Bryan Mbeumo's very good at getting back into these areas, once again, protecting his fullback, which not only will allow Man United to look defensively more solid, but it will give them the ability to break. One of the big things that United have really struggled with under Ruben Amorim is kind of the time to break with speed and the time to play slowly. I feel like it's, kind of a tactical thing where United are starting to understand the basic build-up structure, and the counter-attacking will come. But with Bryan Mbeumo in the side, you know that you're going to get a very good counter-attacking player that's got the intensity to start in this deeper position, but then make those forward runs in behind the defence. And we saw that against Chelsea. So we pick up the play with Chelsea in the final third. They've got a throw in, and Bryan Mbeumo has actually moved to centre forward in this game. He started on the right wing, then moved into that central striking position after Thomas Frank made some changes. But anyway, what I like about this not only is Bryan, as we mentioned previously, instructing his teammates to make the correct defensive decision. Again, Kevin Schade putting pressure on the ball, Brentford closing that kind of trap and snapping in. But just look at Bryan Mbeumo's positioning here. He is ready to explode. He's in that kind of ready to sprint position, which I absolutely love. As soon as the ball's turned over, he is on his bike. He's already out of shot. Kevin Schade carries through the middle, and Mbeumo holds his run. He makes that perfect move at the right time, spinning in behind Levy Colwell, finding the pass, exploding past Tossin's challenge, getting his head up, simply providing the ball into the back of the net. So why does this move not make sense? Well, number one, the finances of the deal. United need to be smart with their cash. They can't continually be stupid for the rest of time. When you look at Bryan Mbeumo's contract, there is 1 year remaining. Brentford do, though, have a clause in the contract to exercise that for an additional year. So you're looking at a player with about 2 years left on his contract. The fee that's being reported is around 50 million quid, which is quite a lot of Manchester United's budget when you consider their net spend has to be around 100 million this summer because they did so many bad deals before that they're still paying for. But yes, the finances. 50 million is a lot of money. And that's something that could cost you in the long term if it doesn't work out. But I think the big thing with Bryan Mbeumo's wages, he only earns around £45,000 at Man United, with only Amad Diallo and Dorgu earning less cash at Old Trafford. So I think there is you get him on a good contract in terms of the length and the wage, but the fee is quite high. But let's go to the verdict. Does this make sense? Well, personally, this is a signing that I make right now. For me, this absolutely makes sense. When I watch Bryan Mbeumo, his speed, his finishing, his defensive work rate is everything I want in a modern forward. He's got the strength to play in the Premier League and also the physicality to hold people off. Brentford sometimes use him as the target for long balls, showing how underrated he is in the air, but also bringing long balls down and getting them into the final third. But I think the bigger thing is the quality United need. They need Premier League ready players. Matheus Cunha's that. Bryan Mbeumo's that. These are players that remind me a lot of Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane joining Liverpool, where in 2 to 3 years' time we'll think, wow, how did Man United get those two players and nobody else wanted them? That's what I'm hoping for anyway. But looking at the statistics, Bryan Mbeumo has 42 goal involvements in the league since the start of last season, which is more than Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford and Antony have managed combined. This deal makes a lot of sense. Mbeumo could also be used in both of the wing-back positions, left wing-back and right wing-back. United need more Amad Diallos in the wing-back position. I think Dorgu is a long-term project, and the stuff that I've really liked about him this season, there's things that I feel he needs to do more. But having another player that can run with the ball, that can create chances, that can also play wing-back, just makes a lot of sense. The money, if it was around 30 to 40 million, I'd be even more happy, but 50 million in this market right now to improve Man United's starting 11 by a country mile. Verdict? This does make a lot of sense. But anyway, guys, get into the comments below. Let me know what you think. Does Bryan Mbeumo's move to Man United make sense for you? I've been Statman Dave, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel?